Well, welcome to the Mental Margarita Show. I have Lucas Thomas with us, owner of RHM Real,
Hey,
financial
how's it going?
planner. How are you doing today, Lucas?
I'm doing fantastic. Just the normal ups and downs of the roller coaster of life. Other than that, good to go.
So, RHM stands for Right Hand Man. Financial planning, something that everyone needs, everyone can use. And we're going to talk today. We're going to tell a little bit about your story and talk about the work that you do in your financial planning business and how you help people, how you light a fire under some people. We're going to go into and explain that. So originally you hail from the East Coast. Tell us a little bit about that and what brought you to Las Vegas.
Lovely. As you get to know me, you'll start to realize I'm on like my trajectory. Most people, their trajectory is go to high school, get a job, stay in the same location, maybe move once in their entire lives to a different state, then have a new trajectory. My trajectory, on the other hand, is more like a constellation of madness, where it just goes up and down, left and right. Um, and I've been everywhere. I go to a new country every year. That's kind of how I ended up in Vegas. So I'm originally from rural Pennsylvania, which is where I get this lovely accent from. No matter what, I can't seem to get rid of it. But hey, it's part of the charm. But yeah, I'm from a town of 800 people. Since I left, it's probably 799. I think the last time I checked, it's like there's only like 600 of us left. That's where I grew up. And then I joined the military, and then the military sent me all over. And then after that, I went to Arizona State University, which is how I ended up on the West Coast. And then I did real estate for many years. And then recently, my wife got a job in the last 2 years in Las Vegas, Nevada. She dragged me along, so now I'm officially Las Vegan. Las Vegan? What's the term? Is it Las Vegan or Las Vegan?
You can be a vegan and you can be a vegan in Las Vegas while you're a Las Vegan. So it all
Oh,
works out.
good. Las
Yep.
Vegan. I like that, Las Vegan.
Actually, after 10 years in Las Vegas, you're almost considered a native. So I don't know. We
Fantastic.
still hold on to our roots. Well, speaking of roots and the journey through life, there's a lot that you have learned. You know, you have a lot of years, 10 years experience in asset management, property management, doing mortgage, banking, investments, all sorts of things. You earned and learned a lot of your things and knowledge and skills through trial by fire. And speaking of fire, you have a very special method and you like to help people get on the track to financial independence by retiring early.
Yeah, fire. Yes.
So we want everybody to have this fire. The Mental Margarita Show is about following your passion, following your dream, making things a reality, committing to yourself. And it sounds like if people call you up, Lucas, and they come and they consult with you and they talk about these things in life that we need to plan for, you have a lot to share with people and what they can do to be in a better financial position. So we're going to touch on a few things, but just highlighting us in a nutshell, and we're going to get to squirrels and their nuts in a minute. And give us a little summary, what people can expect. They're going to call you, and what's the first thing you're going to ask them? Because you really want to get a feel for what direction they want to go in. So as a financial planner, where does it all begin?
So at the end of the day, it's about nuts and bolts. You ask how much money do they have in the bank? What's their income? What are their financial goals? Because at the end of the day, you can only accomplish the goals within, your means. And most of the time, it's always, well, what do you have? What kind of assets do you have? So if you have a house with equity in it, that's okay. We can tap into that. So now you don't. So now you have $100,000 available to you, and you can either pull it in a HELOC or home equity line of credit. You can do a cash out refi. You can convert that house into a rental property. I mean, there's a million things you can do with a home. But then if they don't have a home, it becomes, well, what's the easiest way to get into wealth? And we're going to talk a lot about it during this interview, but pretty much you have the three pillars of wealth. You have your paper assets. That's going to be your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds, ETFs, real estate investment trusts. Crypto technically is it's based off of stocks and a digital coupon or a digital certification. You can still print that out, so it's a paper asset in my opinion. Next up is going to be real estate, which is the lowest tier for most people because, I mean, what's the adage? Most of Americans' wealth is real estate. So therefore, real estate's usually the first tier of a person into being able to have wealth in the future. Because how do they get a better house? Well, they sell their original house and then they buy a new house using the down payment or the profit from the old house to buy a better house. Real estate's pretty much that one. It's like the easiest tier of wealth to actually get into because if you're in paper assets, right? Paper assets, you need to have $10 million to make any sort of decent return on paper assets, stocks and bonds. Otherwise, I mean, what's the point? So that tier is really hard for people to get into unless they just have a lot of capital up front. And then your last one is going to be businesses, which is going to be a lot of the people that watch this show. And I like to talk about businesses because they have an 80% failure rate. And because I have an 80% failure rate, that's why it's so important to have a financial planner and a financial plan. Because what's the number one killer of a business? Cash flow issues. But if you make a proper financial plan, you won't have cash flow issues. I mean, everything can fail. However, if you plan it out correctly and in the right way, you'll be way ahead of everyone else. Because I'm assuming that 80% fail rate is because people don't really plan it out. They just follow their passion and they just hope for the best, which is the worst plan ever.
That's why they're going to come see you so you can set them straight and put them on the right path. So on that path, you explain on your website, and we're going to direct people there so that they can learn some of these things so that they know what they want. And you compare two very common animals and their habits as we look at building wealth and different kind of behaviors, the squirrel brain versus the rat brain. So both are rodents in the rodent family. Explain to us the benefits of kind of their habits and nature that we can also apply to financial planning.
Yeah, it's really funny. The squirrel versus rat brain, I've been developing it since I was in college. Because I've been really keen on habit formation because a lot of poor financial reason people have poor financials is habits. So you are the sum of your habits. So if you have better habits, you'll do better with financial planning. If you have bad habits, then you will be just bad at financial planning. And I started to realize that in nature, what is the one creature that basically has to plan for the future? And because if they don't, they'll freeze to death. Squirrels, right? They have to gather nuts. And if they don't, they'll freeze to death. Therefore, a squirrel always has to be 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, because if they're not, they're not going to survive. And then rats, on the other hand, they're very short-term thinking. Their entire business model is they're kind of like rabbits. We're just going to make as many of us as possible, and hopefully the ones that are left will procreate after winter. So the problem with that is it goes back to the business failure, right? So you have to have 80% failure to have 20% survival rate. And that's kind of like the rat brain, where it says, okay, only 20% of us are going to succeed because we're not going to really think this through. So that's why I like to use the different brain styles, because back when I used to do because I've had a lot of jobs, all self-employed. One of my favorite ones, and actually where the rat brain versus squirrel brain came from, was when I was a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer for about 2 years, and my number one, and where the rat brain came from is, well, when you're tired or your discipline levels are low, what happens, right? You get home from the gym and you eat the ice cream because it's in the refrigerator. That's your rat brain. Rat brain says, It's there, it's convenient, I'm going to eat that. And there's really no way you can stop it, right? Because you could be the most disciplined person in the world, but if it's right there and you have a spoon, I mean, it's over. But if you don't have the ice cream in the fridge originally, and the ice cream is just down in the store, now you got to get in your car, you got to drive, you got to think about what you're doing. You have to physically go into the store, and then you have to pick up just the ice cream. Key here, just the ice cream, and be like, man, I'm going to buy this ice cream, only this ice cream. And at this point, if you don't feel bad and just drive back home. So the rat brain is kind of how do you mitigate that? Because if it's convenient and it's there, you're gonna eat it. So if you come into my home, literally my home is just it's like a layer of just salad, right? Because I have zero discipline. People are like, well, don't you have discipline, Luke? I'm like, I have zero discipline. I just keep everything out of the house. Therefore, if it's not in the house, I just describe what will happen to me, right? I got to go to the store, and then if I don't, and then by the time I get to the ice cream aisle, I'm like, you know what? I really just did all this to go to get I'm gonna go home. It's about creating those barriers. So the rat brain is convenience, instant gratification, but at the end of the day, it's bad for you. And that's kind of where the squirrel versus rat brain comes from. Because a lot of people, they'll do short-term gratification, they'll want this now, and instead what they need to do is be collecting their nuts so they can make investments, right? Such as real estate investments, paper assets, or even in their own business.
And it makes sense. So the bottom line is we have to have a plan for and we can begin that plan even if you don't have a plan right now, because we want the audience to know you can make changes right now at any stage of your life, no matter where you are, no matter how old you are. It's never too early to start. Obviously you need to be an adult, and even there can savings can happen for our children as well. So let's cover I'm going to highlight just a few different important stages of life where people are thinking about the future and thinking about decisions that they have to make. So let's talk about the kids for a second. Planning for your children. We hear a lot of talk about generational wealth. What are just a few examples of some ways that people plan for their children that they might not have thought of?
So estate planning is probably one of my favorite parts of financial planning, because when you're there, it's already too late. And then young people don't even think about it until it's too late. It's just one of those things that's always too late, right? So I'm only 35 years old and I have an estate plan, right? I have every if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I know exactly where all my wealth is going, depending on which state it's in, because if you die, you can't go through probate in every state. They have to liquidate your portfolio, so you have to like go to each individual state, create an LLC in each state, because it's a life form that's perpetual. And so anyway, point is there's a lot of complications when it comes to estate planning. And what happens is people don't plan for it properly. And one of my favorite questions I ask people is literally that: if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, where would your assets go? And they go, I have no idea. Exactly. Do you really want, because they won't even know the local probate laws, right? They won't even know what will happen to any of their assets at all in any shape or form. So I like to put people on their toes by saying, hey, well, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, where your assets are going? And the answer is, well, I think I kind of know where they're going. Okay. Because I was just doing an estate in Arizona, and the guy had put everything in a trust like he was supposed to, but then he forgot to put the house in the trust. And because he forgot to put the house, it ended up in probate, which then it had to go to probate court. And then it was a whole nightmare trying to get that out, because now you can't keep the asset. It has to get liquidated for the creditors. So, I mean, that's the thing people don't think about. And once you're dead, it's too late, So, so for generations, so estate planning is so important for even when you're young, because you could die any day. And that's why when you think about children's financial planning, well, me personally, I buy an apartment building for every one of my children, right? I just bought another fourplex last year for my new child who's yet to be born. But when they are born, I have an apartment building just for them, which will pay all her bills and basically will pay for her college. And when I'm old, it's going to go into a trust, and I'm never, and because I don't know how smart she or he's going to be. For all I know, he's going to raid the principal and sell the thing, all that thing I built my entire life. He'll sell it for nothing because children. But these are the types of things and this is why I do estate planning, because these are the things that people don't think about. And and like you said, you need to start today. And it's never too late to start. However, like it is too late when you get hit by a bus, right? And that's why, you have to have all these in place. Like once you hit your 30s, the moment you have any real assets, you really need to just start. And they don't even have to be a complicated estate plan. It could just be as simple as, hey, I have a life insurance policy that bequeaths this, or I have my house in a trust, or the house is on a joint tenancy. I mean, there's a million ways to, accomplish your estate goals. And that's why it's so important. But it's something that it's important for pretty much anyone of any age to start now.
But moving on to some other areas, Las Vegas, we live in the wedding capital of the world, and also one of the divorce capitals, unfortunately. Now, you also help with divorce planning, but before the divorce, because no one wants things to end in that way, especially a union of marriage, but it does happen. But prior to that, you also touch on couples financial counseling. And money is a source of a lot of fighting and a lot of arguments and disagreements and compromises and all kinds of things. So touch on just for us, because it's really important. It's important for us to have good relationships, not only with our spouses and our partners, but also others, people that we do business with. So just touch briefly on what people might be looking at and may need couples counseling for financial planning to kind of help them navigate through maybe some areas that may be difficult.
Right. Well, basically, number one, be careful with the counselor's moniker. I'm a financial planner, so I don't do the emotion side because I believe you need a license for that. So therefore, number one, not a couples counselor. I am a couples financial planner, which is completely different. But yeah, basically, so for financial planning, I mean, you don't know who you're going to marry into. And this goes back to the squirrel versus rat brain, right? I love her. I love him. It's like we're going to be together forever. And 45% of the time, it doesn't, right? So statistically in America, 45% of all marriages end in divorce. So that's almost 50%. So those aren't great odds, right? That's a coin flip. And because it's a coin flip, you should squirrel brain this, right? You should say, who am I marrying? Because it's the word, like the number one, my least favorite thing in life is when you marry someone and it turns out they have like a 300 credit score. And guess what? That 300 credit score is now yours because you're married. Because when you get married, they combine your FICOs because you're then legally and financially attached. So you could have an 800 credit score and you could marry someone with a 300 and now you have a 500, right? Just because you're now legally and financially attached to them. And that's kind of where the financial planning comes from, where because when people have to work with me, I have to see and know everything. So then because I can't financial plan you properly unless I know where all your assets are, all your income, everything else. And then at that point, I just walk through what all the finances look like together. And then we come to a conclusion. Like I said, I don't tell people how to live their lives. My job is just to say, hey, based on his assets, this is what he has. Based on her assets, this is what she has. Here's the best way to combine that. And they make their own decisions from there, right? So, but that's the type that's why but it's really important to have that kind of financial planning, because how often do people marry not knowing anything about anything, and that's and one of the hardest conversations for someone to have is about money. Like even culturally, we don't like talking about money, let alone in our love life.
Your mission is to help people succeed to become net worth millionaires and achieve financial freedom. What a wonderful way to do business and a service to offer folks to educate them in this way. So please share with us someone that a little story we could take with us
Yeah,
from there.
sure. I'm gonna go to my boilerplate story, which is one of my friends. I like to call him my prototype. He hates it when I call him that, but he really was. Because when I was building my wealth, he was there too. And while I was building my wealth, he was always that guy that's like, he was there, and I'm like, there's no reason you can't do this, right? And there's nothing special about my buddy. He was a security guard. Like that was his job. He was a security guard. And there's nothing, I mean, you don't need to be special. You don't need a lot of income. You just got to do the right things at the right time and go through the windows of opportunity. And I was going through those windows and I kept growling at him for years. For like 2 or 3 years, I just growled at him because he originally started on my couch, right? He's actually from where I'm from, rural Pennsylvania, and he was living on my couch. And then he ended up renting from me because I was a live-in landlord for a time. So I was renting all the rooms in my house. And he was living on my couch initially, and then somebody else moved out, so I moved him in. So he was my buddy. Then I was his like live-in landlord. And then eventually I moved out of that house. And when I moved out, it wasn't worth, I couldn't be a living landlord anymore. I was renting all the rooms individually. So then I had to kick everyone out, right? So, which is always fun because most of them are my friends. So I'm just like, hey, everyone's got to get out. I'm moving out. So now everyone's gone. And because I had to turn it into a normal rental property. So, but it was funny because he's like, well, I'm going to rent. I'm going to do this. Oh my God, what do I do with my life? I'm like, dude, just buy a fourplex. I mean, I've done it multiple times. It's not that hard. Just buy a fourplex. And then what ended up happening to him is I finally convinced him so a security guard, he bought a fourplex with a FHA loan, right? Because anything under 4 is considered residential. So he bought a 4-unit apartment building and he lived in one of the units. And then he was able to break even on the mortgage, but he's also able to pocket $1,500 a month because of the rent he was collecting from the other 3 units. And what's the number one budget killer of any average person? Rent and mortgage, right? There's this term called mortgage poor. That's when you own a house, all your wealth is in the house, but at the end of the day, you're paying all of your income towards the house. But with a fourplex, you can actually eliminate your mortgage, make a little bit of profit, but here's the kicker: you get to keep your entire paycheck from now on. So then he was able to get into that fourplex, and then he was able to use that income to buy another fourplex like 2 or 3 years later. So then he has 8 units. So he has 2 apartment buildings. And with those 2 apartment buildings, he doesn't really have to work anymore.
Mhm.
And right now he's like not like he's been like semi-retired for almost a year now. I keep telling him he needs to go get a job and buy more fourplexes because, well, at the end of the day, it's like once you're I'm like, once you become a real estate person, it's really hard to get out of being a real estate person because it's like if you have 100 grand, you're like, what do I do with this money? I'm like, well, the only thing I know that makes money easily is real estate. And I'm just like, oh, well, so he's gonna buy some more. But he's been like professionally unemployed for about a year now. He achieved fire. And the funny thing about him, he's only 35. So he's the same age as me. Statistically, real estate makes the most millionaires out of like any other asset class than any other asset class. So it's like, why would you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Right. And speaking of your website, what is that so that people can go and they can check out all of your services and
yes.
they can book you online. They can hook up with you, ask questions, um,
Mhm.
whatever they need. So what is that website? We'll also make sure that people are seeing that throughout the episode as well, so that they don't miss a chance to reach out to you.
Yeah, it's really simple. It's RHM real, as in like real estate or reality.com. So RHMreal.com, Romeo Hotel Mike, Romeo Echo Alpha Lima.com. Yeah. I go over the life cycle planning, and like I said, real estate's pretty much the base because I go through the different tiers. Actually, I just had a client I'm working with a few weeks ago. He's like, I make too much money. What do I do? I'm like, well, you can either start a small business, which will take a lot of time and effort, or you could do real estate, which is one of the oldest. Someone just told me they're like, being a landlord's in the Bible, apparently. And I'm like, well, if it's as old as the Bible, I mean, you can't be doing, you can't go wrong. This has been around since ancient times. Okay. So
Right. One of the original business plans, definitely.
yeah, exactly. What do you do? He pays me money to live in my house. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing about explaining real estate because there's nothing complicated about it, you know?
We can learn a lot from the squirrel, but do you know where all your nuts are? You need a plan and a right-hand man. Learn how you can achieve FIRE, gain financial independence, and retire early. Call Lucas Thomas, your right-hand man in financial planning today at 602-885-1148 or visit rhmreal.com. In the year 1984, Hot Pink was in and the Brewers were out. Bruce Springsteen's hit single, Born in the USA, top charts everywhere. Meanwhile, not born in the USA, came an artist from Belgium named Albert Zukowski, taking sculpture to new heights, creating the ghostly Last Supper. And while you were watching Ghostbusters, Albert created Ghost Rider, which is available for your viewing pleasure near the ghost town of Rhyolite, Nevada. Begin your amazing experience today at goldwellmuseum.org.
Most nights they buy the bars up. Candy coated Chevy cars on the highway. It's Frankie Baby, it's on, and this is my way. Dean Martin at the Sands this Friday. With Sammy Davis, here's a little hint where I stay. The city shines like Liberace's mansion, and you know Elvis had the whole city dancing. Showgirl silhouette steady prancing. Shout out to June, just the Copa Girls anthem. Legal gambling, yeah, that would tempt me. At Sin City, holy water couldn't cleanse me. And Wayne Newton had the crowd in a frenzy. Live at the Stardust, the seats never empty. Now if you having a good time in Las Vegas, at the count of 3, I want to hear you scream, Viva Las Vegas. Ready? 1, 2, 3.